The Brisbane Lions fancast is back after opening round, and well, the question was posed to us last week from our friend Capish: is when is this going to happen? When are we going to bottle a lead? When are we going to cough up a lead like Melbourne last year or Richmond the year before? And we said, ideally it won't. In fact, we said, I think, it won't happen this year. Well, Capish,
No, that's not correct. We really minced our words with whether it was a not showing up and a capitulatio.
yeah. And we thought the capitulatio wasn't going to happen. We said that hopefully we could limit the not showing up to just one performance. So this is a bit of a call out at the start of the podcast to Capish to get in touch, because a few people have said, oh no, Capish, after posing the question last week, it's happened straight away. So reach out to us, Capish. Let us know how you're coping with the loss, because we're all in this together. And if you'll indulge me for 2 minutes and be a bit of a Carlton apologist. As a neutral and as a Carlton supporter, that is one of the all-time wins for those guys. I mean, coming up to Brisbane, no one gave them a chance. They're missing Walsh, they're missing Wiedering, they're missing Jack Martin. Doherty goes out with an ACL in the first half. There's a few other players not in their 22. They're getting spanked in the first quarter, come back and pull off that victory. Their key forwards dominated. One of the all-time wins for Carlton. So if you're a Carlton fan, that's your miracle on grass, and I'm sure you're appreciating it as much as anyone right now. And congratulations. Right, enough of that. Let's wallow in our own shit now.
Yeah, I was going to say it is very much kind of like their Geelong comeback, but don't care for it, so whatever. I think if that game's played 100 times, we win 99, and that was the one, so I'm just going to get that out of the way early.
Yeah. All right, well, let's
get on with the show.
Let's get on with the show. Let's start at the teams, and it's not really like going through ins and outs, but more some just sort of selections that are sort of conversation worthy. Jimmy Madden didn't make the team after playing both preseason games. Neither did Jimmy Tunstall. Kyle Lohman made it in as sub. Darcy Gardner kept his spot as the forward, which meant Rayner spent a little bit more time in the mids, and we will talk about the effect on those a little bit later. Other than that, it was sort of business as usual. Everyone more or less lined up how we thought they would. And being at the game, I sort of did notice a bit of structure that looked a little bit different this year, so we will talk about that. And your mate JL made the starting lineup, so I'm sure you've got some thoughts on that. We'll share.
Well, I think I only sent you one message during the whole game, and it was before the game, and it just said, don't.
Yes.
And I think you understood exactly what I meant.
I 100% knew what you meant there.
Were there any red flags that... this will sound like revisionist history, but were there any red flags that jumped out at you on selection?
Not necessarily. I thought Jimmy Madden would make the team, especially with McKenna unavailable, but when I saw that back six, back seven, I thought, you know what, we've probably got enough to cover it. And then, if as you said, revisionist history, if you know that Kiddy Coleman's going to go down halfway, then you select another halfback in the team. Whether that's Jimmy Madden, whether that's Jackson Pryor, whoever that may be, or you shuffle around. So the bench...
Yeah, that stuck out to me pretty quickly, because I was sort of like, we normally play 3 halfbacks and we're playing 2. It was the one position we didn't need shit to go down in.
Yeah.
Which is obviously what happened. And I think that, we'll talk about Coleman, but his injury really led to Wilmot's influence being scuppered in the second half massively, because he was electric in that first quarter.
Yeah.
I think I sent you a message during the week, or it might have been to my brother, I can't remember. It was like the Lizard. I love the Lizard from Sydney. The Lizard's he's one of the guys that I would just pluck and put straight into the Lions.
Sure.
And I found it interesting. Just an aside, going back to that sort of Sydney and Melbourne game, where they're sort of on comms, I was listening, and they're saying, it's a very structured game, two defenses, and like Sydney's persistence has paid off. And it's like, nah, man, it's the Lizard breaking 3 lines and doing a bullshit kick inside 50 to set them off. Like, and I said to you, the Lizard's kind of like Darcy Wilmot's like exuberance and athleticism with Jared Berry's size profile.
Yeah. And then the execution of Kiddy. like can pinpoint a kick, because no one's boasting about Bez for his skill execution there. But yeah, absolutely one of the great players in the league at the moment. And I think he's going to have a fantastic season.
But it was fun to see Wilmot straight off the back, taking on contests like that.
Yeah.
With that level of exuberance. And definitely it was a game of one quarter and then 2.5 quarters with a bit of shit in the middle, really.
Well, it was sort of like we dominated one quarter, they dominated one quarter, and then there was the second and fourth quarters were like genuine tight tussles. I thought the second quarter we still had a good portion of the momentum, but just failed to put it on the scoreboard. We had like however many entries for one goal. There was sprayed shots out on the full behinds that were easily kickable goals, and it just sort of left the door ajar for them going into halftime, especially when I think they kicked maybe the two just before halftime, and then Kiddy goes down at halftime. Vossi obviously gives them a rocket during the 20-minute break at halftime as well, and they came back a completely different team. But that first, let's talk about the good bit. The first quarter, we were unstoppable. Like, that is the best footy. We often speak about that Melbourne game last year and those middle two quarters being the best footy we've played. That first quarter on Friday night, no one's matching that. The pressure was immense. The skill execution, like we're kicking, like Hugh McCluggage is kicking goals from the 50 on the boundary. Excuse me. The contest work is there. They barely get it over halfway. We are just dominating in every single facet of the game. Carlton looked like they didn't want to be there. They didn't want to feel body on body. They didn't want to tackle. It's like I was sitting there thinking at that time, like, wow, you've had 6 months to think about the prelim and how you got shown up by a better team, and this is what you're serving up. Like, I feel bad for the Blues brothers that had all travelled up and, like, they were hoping for a better performance. And granted, it came. But at that time I was thinking, if this is what we can expect from the Lions, we deserve to be premiership favourites, but it wasn't to be, obviously.
No, they looked like they had a point to prove, and they looked like they were kind of playing with a level of like confident anger, I guess, in that first quarter. It very much sort of looked like they'd thought about it, and they sort of said, we're not going to let ourselves get bullied, which has not really been a thing that's happened, but it was impressive. And some of the younger to middle leader types were really, perking up. I thought I hadn't seen McCluggage, lead in that sort of a way ever.
Yep.
Where he was sort of literally sort of telling even more senior players where to go and what to do and that sort of thing. So they were like by every metric, every sign was pointing in the right direction. Particularly when you've got the dual Coleman medalist from the last 2 seasons going behind the ball after 15 minutes in the first game. You're like, are you doing something right? Gardner looked good up forward. I think you said on after the siren, you were saying like they were rushing in off of the center square. We were like, how occasionally a team will get kind of shellacked for being like bees to a honeypot, being the ball.
Yep.
We were like that, but not. We were like bees to each contest, and we were outnumbering at every contest. And we did almost everything except for land the absolute knockout blow in that first quarter. We left the door ajar through some really, really stupid troll antics by Oscar McInerney. And they slimed one. I think they slimed one out the back. And second quarter, they got a goal that was sort of barely there or something like that. It might have been a free kick or something. So, but I definitely think 7 goals, 2 in the first quarter. The remainder of the game being 5 goals, 9 with at least 1 out on the full.
Oh, there was a couple, yeah.
Where's Grasshopper with the expected score of the game?
Well,
I'm curious to see that one.
I think the expected score had us winning by 20 to 25 points or something like that. So, and still, if you look at the metrics at the end of the game, we still stack up in a lot of the key ones. And even that third quarter, when we were getting our pants pulled down, we still hit the scoreboard, just not in any meaningful way. It was 1 goal, 6. So we still had 7 shots on goal. Granted, there was probably a couple rushed in there along the way, but it's a different story. Like Charlie missing a goal from 10, 15 meters out. Just stupid stuff along the way. And of course, like, our intensity dropped right off. Theirs picked right up. I'm not going to take anything away from Carlton. Like I said at the start of the show, one of the all-time great wins for that club. And, congratulations to him. But, yeah.
It really felt after halftime, particularly, nothing could go wrong for them. It was the swinging, like, I don't like talking about umpiring, but the swinging free kicks, we couldn't seem to buy a free kick for good portions of that game to stop momentum. I personally, I think Jared Berry got pushed out of contest twice by Sam De Koning, where he got pushed in the back and he had front spot into marking contests that Harry McKay ended up scoring goals from. They could miss a set shot.
No, they converted really well.
Yeah, they could miss a set shot, and it just it looked like it was kind of written for that kind of bullshittery. I think more than anything, but I find it really hard to draw conclusions off of round one anyway. We've lost 4 of the last 5 first games of the season. We said it last week, or you might have said it on After the Siren, like. We've shown we can still make a grand final having lost round 1. And I think we showed much more than we showed against Port Adelaide, or much more than we showed against even Port Adelaide the year before, where we limped over the line. Certainly more than the Hawthorn game. I did kind of find it was almost like a weird on steroid version of the Sydney game from 2021, where I even went back and looked at it, because I think we got 3 quick goals.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, that's
and then we got pegged. And I even looked through, and it's like, it even had like Kiddy Coleman injury. And I was like, what the hell? Like, he went off with an injury. So it's, almost this weird thing. But, still adamant, 99 times out of 100 we were in that game. And sometimes footy does weird stuff, I tell you what.
Certainly does, and sometimes, like this week, it's been a horrible one. We spoke about, maybe first episode of this season, we said, what would you rather for a round 1 performance? One where we don't show up, or one where we bottle a lead? And I think I remember saying I'd rather bottle a lead and at least show something than, there's nothing worse as any sort of sports fan when your team just simply doesn't rock up. And I thought, oh no, that's Carlton in the first little bit. And... have fresh off the bottling a lead. It's hard to validate and consolidate that thought, but I think I'd still prefer what happened on Friday to what happened last year round 1.
Well, I think we said that the bottling leads to anger.
Yes.
And the not showing up is a much more depressive thing, which kind of went counterculture to what Capish was saying. But can we not just win?
It would be nice, wouldn't it?
Like, I kind of would like a bit of just ease into the season.
Yeah.
Even if you lose slightly and you play a decent game, or it's a back and forward or something, and plus also, I said I didn't think we'd be undefeated this season at home. I didn't mean after the first game.
Yeah.
But I guess that there goes that. So at least the narrative won't build in like a weird way later on in the season. But, it's just a bit of a weird night, and just before halftime, I don't know what it is with my teams and just before halftime, but just before halftime, Coleman kicks around the corner. In real time, I thought he snapped his leg, and then he's obviously in a bit of discomfort on the ground.
Yeah,
to make it a cool 4th ACL in the last 5 years for us. So anyone saying that we don't get injuries, we might not get small injuries, but we sure as hell get big injuries, I tell you what.
Yeah, by and large, we've been pretty good. Like, we've been pretty lucky injury-wise and things like that. We're not having heaps of players miss with soft tissue injuries a lot of the time. There's the occasional little, hamstring here and there, like McKenna's out with one right now. But by and large, that hasn't really been a problem. But yeah, Hipwood, Rayner, Ashcroft, now Kiddy. It just...
Does Duday count?
Sort of, not really.
Surrogacy?
Yeah. He hasn't made an insurance claim with us yet, put it that way.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. So I have a question regarding that. So, What Alex Rance, Nat Nui, uh, Bob Murphy? Is that his
Sure.
name?
Yep.
What do they all have in common?
I don't know.
All out with injuries, and their teams won premierships.
Yeah,
Big
right.
players.
Sure. Yeah, okay.
Can you think of any others? I
Uh,
couldn't be bothered. I thought to do some research and was like, nah, that's three pretty good ones
yeah,
because
I'm
I'm pretty
sure.
sure they said.
I'm sure they're
I'm
out
pretty
there.
sure in whenever it was 20 or 19. No, 19 Rance got pants by Coxie in the prelim, right?
No, that was 18.
18. Okay,
Yeah.
well then it was 19 that he went down in round one with an ACL and never played again. Yeah, they won the flag. Nat Nui, they said that West Coast couldn't do it without him. Bob Murphy, obviously being the captain of the Bulldogs, and they did it. I don't know if it was for large stretches, but because there has been a lot of chit chatter of no Coleman, no party for us. So, what are your take on that?
I mean, it's obviously a big hit, but I don't think, you know, if I had the choice of him doing a knee round one or opening round or round 23, I'll take this one because we've got more time to adjust and come up with structure around it. And I mean, McKenna's due to be back next week. It's not a like for like, but it is close-ish. Like, McKenna's fairly creative and skillful with his ball use. He's got the dash off halfback. I don't
We
think.
need another one. Like we need a third. We need a third half back, and I think last year's use of that, and also just the fact that like Daniel Rich couldn't get a game last year, and
Yeah.
he had three ahead of him in that position. So, um, yeah, like pros and cons. I was thinking of doing a little article on that. Try my chops at a bit
Yeah.
of typing.
Something to do at our Patreon page. Yeah, we will get into it because we've got a number of questions that have come through across the week, and obviously Kiddy Coleman is front and center of that whole situation. But I mean, there's what else do you say about the game? I thought Lockie had a great game. Harris had some uncharacteristic mistakes, but I thought by and large he was one of our best on. Wilmot played a great game. Zorko and Dunks both started well, faded throughout the game. Archie had a really solid hit out. And Ryan Lester was probably one of our best defenders. I don't think he lost a one-on-one. Fletcher has been quiet. Opening round in the two preseason games, he's barely been cited. So it'll be interesting to see if he sticks in the team over the next couple of weeks, or if Jimmy Tunstall sort of takes that spot, or a Sharpie.
Yeah, well, there's a certain other molasses running individual in the midfield that I'd like to see out of the team. But yeah, I thought McCluggage was good in times. I still think he's one of the best kicks inside 50 in terms of
Yep.
or the mark. You just want to see a little bit more either out of the tools or if they're not going to be as super present in the games as they kind of were in the back half of last year, you at least want it to be converting efforts. Like that one where Danaher hit the post. He burned Link so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just some of the conversion was killer, and like when you're not scoring goals, that kills your team because you're not getting any scoreboard pressure, you're not getting any perceived pressure or anything like that. But yeah, largely one to forget. But there were some really good performances. I don't think you could really say anyone performed particularly badly in the first quarter.
No, I mean, everyone did their job and it showed on the scoreboard. At times throughout the night, you probably thought to yourself, as a lot of other supporters have, and you can see that in the fallout in social media in the aftermath, is that we may have been a bit too tall. For the conditions, it was a little bit greasy, but I mean, where it came to the fore was when obviously Jack Payne was having a mare, and once Darcy Gardner went to Charlie Curnow, he was unsighted, but the damage was done at that point. And Jack Payne, I haven't watched the replay, but at the ground, that mark Jack Payne took in the forward half looked like a mark from all accounts. So I don't know what the explanation was as to why it wasn't.
Yeah, it was a mark. They said that it got spoiled, and then he like juggled it, and then went to run back to take his kick over the mark and ran out of the bounds.
Right. Sure. Okay.
So cool story.
But I guess that comes into what you're saying. Like that first quarter and a half, everything was going our way, including we were getting the rub of the green with the umpires, and then it all just switched at half time, and then yeah, we know what happened. Carlton walked away with the victory thanks to a Harry Mackay goal. So yeah, yeah. You said last week that Oscar would probably be excited at the thought of Tom de Koning being the sole ruckman.
I don't remember saying that.
I will get the audio for
I'm
you.
sure. I'm okay. Well, yeah, because that doesn't. I mean, that sounds like the sort of thing that I would say, but it's also not something that I agree with. So I'm like, what? Am I just? I've taken your Kool-Aid and I'm going for the shock jockiness, clearly, because I'm sort of like maybe I like got them mixed up and thought that the one at Geelong was more like the one. Sorry, the one at Carlton was more like the one at Geelong. So he was like a pivotal cog in their back line, and then that being taken out to play. Whereas this one's much more a ruckman. Like their body composition's all different. So possibly had an aneurysm. I'll get on the aspirin. Hot smart, which is not a term. Hot smart, quick smart,
That's
hot
better.
stuff. Take your pick. Yeah, so probably said that. Don't agree with it then. Certainly don't agree with it now because I feel like OE was run absolutely ragged by the young fella.
Yeah.
And I thought TDK was far had the better of him. So, and he could really be one to watch in terms of an emerging ruckman this year.
Yeah, and he's been known to float forward and have a decent impact there as well. And when it came to our secondary ruckman, Joe, and they've sort of, Carlton seemed to have employed our tactic there, and Harry Mackay's doing a bit of red time rucking for Carlton, and I thought he did really well as well. So, yeah.
Well, they had a lot of different people doing ruck. They had Cripps in the ruck, they had Kennedy in the ruck, they had all sorts of weird stuff going on.
Yeah, they did.
I also tended to find that they were balling the ball up much quicker than in any game I'd ever really seen, because there were 2 or 3 times when Joe had obviously elected to be in the ruck from about 30 meters away, and he came in like a freight train and gave away free kicks, I think, twice. And it was sort of like, don't they normally like really aggressively and like, all right, boys, who's gonna ruck now? Like under 8s where you have to put your hand up and they're sort of like you and you. There wasn't a lot of that. Plus, also, could it really kill them to throw the fucking ball in more than about 10 meters most of the time? Because that is a killer.
Yeah, it's been happening a bit.
It's adding like 35 extra sprints to ruckman's games, and that is not what you want to be doing. Oh yeah, just dash an extra 20 meters because we can't throw the ball properly. Like, do some work, lift some weights in the gym. They're all bloody snappers on the sidelines. I tell you what, they're all like built like absolute bamboo poles. So, I put them on notice last year and they didn't do anything. So clearly they're not listening.
One thing, being at the ground, there's a few things I did notice structure-wise. Our sort of forward mid-rotation seemed to be, I don't know, they were rotating much more often. So, like, you rarely saw the same 3 starting at a CBA. And between Zorko, Lyons, Dunkley, McCluggage, Neil, Bailey, they were all just sort of having a go. And there was one centre bounce where it was Zorko, Neil, and Jared Lyons, so your veterans in the middle, and then coming in off the 50, Dunkley.
Can you feel my eyes rolling?
Yes, I can. Dunkley, McCluggage, and Link all just coming straight into that centre bounce after it had gone up, and then Zorko's lining up in the square. I think Dunkley lined up in the goal square as well at some point. And then Owie would actually fall back rather than float forward and be a marking target. He'd float back more often than not and help out as a spare defender. He got his hands to a lot of balls, but didn't pull down as many marks as we're used to.
Same with Gardner, because Gardner could have had an amazing debut in that position in terms of clunking marks, but much like the game in Blacktown, Blackout, Black Snake. He couldn't pull anything in.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference in terms of perception and that sort of thing. But yeah, no, I did think that was an interesting observation. Obviously, something that you miss from the television. But do you think that's like a legit strategy going forward, or was that just an element of like trying to overwhelm, or are we trying to pick the pace up at certain times of the game, or? being the beginning?
It's a hard one because, when the game started and you see the four running to the bench plus Kai, it looked very small. Like you didn't look at it and go, oh, we haven't got a spare sort of mid to tall utility. It was, I think Link went to the bench, JL went to the bench, Berry, and maybe Archie. I could be getting those.
I'm talking more than running in from the center squares type things. Yeah. Rather than Gardner, but
Yeah, it's like it was working at the time when I was noticing that sort of stuff. It definitely worked, and then Rayner was obviously rotating through the mid and forward. He didn't necessarily have the game we were hoping after he had a fairly decent preseason in the middle, but we had other midfielders coming back that he had to share the time with. So yeah, it was a bit different. It was a bit different, and I think long term it's good, and I think it'll work. It's hard to sort of give it a grade after one performance where we've got a result like that. And
Raiders still put up pretty decent numbers, and considering time in the mids, he still had 5 clearances, 5 tackles, goal, 15 odd disposals. But maybe you're looking at the time on ground, going that he didn't have the impact he would have wanted. But when you lose someone so kind of structurally important in terms of Coleman, I think that destabilized the whole defense in terms of he's really that first player in terms of breaking that initial line and breaking that initial press. Did you notice, speaking of that, when we were in attacking 50 and they were, Carlton had the ball and they were chip kicking, we were holding off the mark and giving them the first little phase. That's something that we didn't really do last year. It got done, I think, by Collingwood.
There's a few teams that have been doing it.
I feel like it's just an element of you can run 10 steps more, but you're going to be kicking into more congestion. So maybe a bit of that. Just a really, really Borange kind of performance, seemingly by a lot of people, particularly definitely after quarter time. Not before quarter time. Before quarter time, it was Technicolor rainbows.
It certainly was, and it's the performance that we feared, and it's the one we got, and hopefully that's it, and we can forget about it and write it off and move forward, because we've got Freo over in Freo next week, so that's going to be, we've got a game under our belt, and a lot of pundits are saying that's going to be an advantage to us, having a proper home and away hit out, getting an idea for the pace of the game and the physicality compared to a pre-season match. It obviously does step up, and especially in a round one performance. So we're going to be used to that now, whereas Freo's still coming off a week off after a pre-season game. So, we
also have about an 8 or 9 day break going into the trip at twilight on Sunday.
All right, well, it's probably enough of the chat about the game, but we do have a few questions, so that will inevitably include talking about the game. These questions for Crisp Communications, crispcoms.co, or check him out on Instagram as well. Winston, only the obvious ones. What happened and who comes in for Coleman? Well, Winston, I don't know what happened. We shat the bed.
He did an ACL in a way that I've not seen anyone do an ACL before. So, by all money, I thought that was a little cheeky shin fracture, but no.
Or like a hyperextension and he'd be okay. Whereas Doherty's ACL was far more innocuous when you look at it.
That was an ACL.
Yeah.
Who comes in?
I mean, McKenna is the obvious choice, I suppose.
Well, yeah, but I mean, McKenna would come in anyway, so that's not flying, because you can't get away with that on Brooksy.
I know,
McKenna's coming back in anyway, so it's who else comes in would be my thought.
I don't know that anyone else comes in. I think McKenna was going to come in, and who was going to get dropped? Maybe Loman, and there'd be reshuffling. I mean, you're not dropping stars.
But you still got 3. So that's the thing, is you still got Wilmot, McKenna, Coleman in a perfect world.
Yep.
Whereas now we've just got McKenna and Wilmot. So, I mean, get another left footer in there.
Well, the only one that I can think of is your mate Jackson Pryor, and I don't want him in the team.
Yeah, well, I think an extended run of games could
Maybe.
do him him good. Contest work, probably a little bit. He's a bit scrappier than Coleman, but yeah, I don't know. Coleman doesn't provide it so much as run as he does immaculate timing, and then obviously the penetrating kick, which is something that no one else can really do. So
Yeah.
I think someone asked who you can't replace him in a 1-for-1 capacity.
Yeah. No, I don't think you can. I don't think we've got any player that's got all the skills that Coleman has. I think we've got players that have got bits and pieces, but no one person is going to slot into that role the way that Kiddy has been able to do that. So, and his intercepting has really stepped up over the last sort of 12 months as well. So, I think McKenna comes in, and I think we'll see players spend a little bit more time chopping out down back. I think Leicester's workload will lift, as will Wilmot's, and probably Cal Archie's.
Yeah, I can see him. Well, the thing is, we all, for all money, thought that he would play the third halfback.
Yeah.
There needs to be a level of versatility to be able to do that. I mean, you know me, I'm an idiot, so I'm probably going to be like, yeah, Jackson Pryor will come in and play like the whole season, because I think if you can't replace the classiness of disposal, replace it with contest and running. So for me, I'd be inclined to maybe think Jackson Pryor or Noah Answorth come in just for a bit of intensity around the ball and let the ones with slightly more athleticism deal with the run.
I just think Noah Answorth, like, he couldn't get a game in the preseason, like the official or the unofficial one. I think he's gone down the pecking order quite a bit, and it's a shame because we both really like Noah Answorth, but I think he's just fallen behind. And unless
falling behind does lead to these situations, so where you got to be ready to go. So
maybe, I mean, I wouldn't hate it.
Should I write a pros and cons article of every potential?
Yeah, go for it.
Because we're trying to figure out what to do that we can offer people on Patreon, and I've always wanted to be a journalist.
Well, there you go. Now's your time. Our next Crispcoms question comes from Loz. Firstly, have you heard from Capish, and are they okay? No, Loz, we haven't heard from Capish yet, but fingers crossed that they will reach out after this episode goes out. Secondly, our best is clearly good enough. I'm not that worried that we still seem to go to water when teams apply a lot of pressure. This cannot be only mental anymore. How do we get better at absorbing this pressure? It's a great point.
Really thinking about this one, aren't I? Big deep breath. I think it's more just like it's seems to be a lack of like on-ball leadership, which is interesting given what we talked about in terms of ranking our captains. On-ball leadership and knowing when to dictate the pace of the game, because we're great at dictating the game if we want it to be quick, but we're not the best in terms of trying to slow the game down, which in all honesty was one thing that we were actually a lot better at after the Melbourne capitulation. So that's what they're going to be called now, capitulations.
Oh, man.
Capitulations. Last year we did that well against Geelong. We did it well again. Although they were close games, we still took a lot of the sting out of the game. So you never know. Maybe they were absolutely knackered after the first quarter.
Well, that's not a good sign either.
No, but it is kind of... Yeah, first games are pretty weird. Like, we saw in the Gold Coast games, dudes like that dude vomiting at like half-time. Or GWS game, I think. Like, just... The first game of the season does weird stuff to people.
Well, I'm happy to mark it out as a weird anomaly and move on, and hopefully that's it. Jules, with the Crisp Comms question, did we stop going down the corridor after quarter time? Did we just switch off? Did Carlton just play better? Why do we seem to do this a fair bit? And then finishes it off with a help.
Well, I think in the past few years, what it's been, we had really one capitulation last year and maybe one. So it's not that often. It's more just, I think that these games really do
they stand out
in the memory.
Yeah.
So when you're dealing with it being, I think I saw a lot of people saying like, "Oh, this is the most embarrassing home performance since round 23, 2022," and it's like, well, that's a long time ago. There's a lot of teams that have had some pretty horrifying, embarrassing moments at home.
Yeah.
Uh, Melbourne. And I mean, that game was against Melbourne. It is interesting, that round 22 or round 23, 2022 game, because I don't really remember it. I remember that was the only thing I remember was Harrison Petty crying. But the thing is that those demons were like exercised about 2 weeks later in the elimination final against Melbourne. So it kind of bit off topic, but yeah, I think it doesn't happen as often as you'd think, and also the level of expectation is something that really, really amplifies and highlights it, because we're expecting the team to win every week, even when we probably shouldn't. The best team doesn't always win. Unfortunately, it sucks, but it's like they're all professional athletes that are probably pretty good at putting the ball through the goal sticks. And on any given day, they probably should be able to do it. Like, systems and structures aside, and I really do think that was the 1 in 100 for Carlton.
Yeah, you're right. Neil from Twitter, what is with us and first games of the season? Did the Kiddy injury impact the players more than we think? Do we need alternative options up front?
Don't know what's with us in round ones, but it's kind of a bit of it's not a meme, but it's pretty annoying. That said, I got to say, GWS didn't beat Collingwood by more than 44 points, so we still hold the record of biggest loss inflicted to a reigning premier in round one in AFL history, which was 2019, where we beat West Coast by 44 points. I was keeping an eye on that because it was flitting at 44 points. I think was the highest margin in that GWS game, and I was going, I do quite like I will respect GWS.
Yeah.
But I didn't want them to beat our record because it's the only good round one we've had in recent memory. Did the Coleman injury affect our players? Yeah, I mean, probably not affect the players, but it affected the structure sure as hell, because Wilmot fell right out of the game. We didn't have as much drive off of halfback because the aforementioned only having 2 halfbacks versus having 3 the entirety of last season. So I think that's an oversight, and that was a red flag for me on selection. What was the last bit?
Do we need alternative options up front?
Well, we used an alternate option up front. We had Darcy Gardner up front as a first time. So is that an alternate being a return to the norm?
Well, that's it. Now that we've seen Darcy up forward in a proper home and away game, result aside, are we persisting with it, or do we go back?
I'll ask you this. Ask you this. So let's say, because I don't think that you can reasonably have Zorko and Jared Lyons in the team, because both of them should be subbed off because they can't really run out of game. But what if Jack Payne went off, Lohman came on, Gardner swings back? That to me works far better as a sub in terms of an option. When you get Kerno going off the chain, he didn't have a sniff after Gardner went to him.
Yeah.
I feel like that would have been a logical sub had the injury not happened. And I know we're dealing in what's and ifs and buts and whatever, but it's not a bad lever to pull in terms of going, okay, well, if you're running a bit tall down back to get a little guy. I mean, Lohman is still, I'm not sold on him because you said it yourself, the impact that their sub had was tangible, whereas the impact our sub had was not tangible.
He did a few little bits, but yeah, he was far from an impactful sub, that's for sure. Especially when you.
Whereas I think you bring Zorko off the bench and you're going to get ballistics. So I still think that is a really good way forward, but maybe it's just a little bit. Maybe Dev Rob's not quite match fit to an AFL standard or not quite ready. But for a team that was only 2 changes away from the grand final team, I just think, if I'm going to be adding in players, it's probably not going to be to throw Gardner also in there as well. That does make us a bit tall, but change of up forward, not really. Kind of don't think we can we? Season started. We've locked in our players.
Well, I mean, it'll be interesting because obviously Fags is a big fan of a 3 talls up forward. Like, it's obvious. It worked with us with McStay. He gave Jack Gunston every opportunity, and he's tried to reinvent it again this year with Gardner. So it's obviously his preference in an ideal world if we can get it to work. And I think he'll persist with Gardner for a little bit before potentially defaulting to the, all right, 2 tall forwards and Rayner as your quasi third and making that work, because we've seen it work. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds over the next half a dozen weeks, and whether he persists with it because it's clearly what he wants, or if he brings in Darcy Fort or Brandon Ryan or something like that. I don't know.
Do you think that people would, do you think it's the fact that both Hipwood and Danaher are over 200 centimetres that, like, if Hipwood was 195 or, Danaher was 195, we would be having these discussions? Because, like, GWS are playing Hogan with Riccardi and Brown. That's 3 talls. It's just that Riccardi and Brown aren't quite as tall, and probably even similar with Sydney. Melbourne's a little bit different. Goodness me, Josh Shackey. What the fuck is he doing still in an AFL team?
Yep. He did all right on Thursday.
Did he?
I mean, he did okay, whatever. Like, Melbourne's forward lines is a burning garbage pile, so if they had any other option, they would be going with it.
Yeah, that's true.
But, I mean, he's getting a game in front of Fullerton, so there you go.
That is a pretty weird one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I guess Fullerton wasn't a number 2 draft pick, so expectations. I think, like, a lot, most teams that are playing 3 larger, forwards. We're not different. It just happens to be that we have 2 200+ centimetre players, which, funnily enough, I think are probably better at ground level than a lot of the 195 guys.
Yeah, some of them.
It's just it's a perspective thing and a perception thing, and, like, I think Jack Gunston really ruined it for most people more than anything, because you said it at the start of the season. You're like, McStay plays every game last year and no one bats an eyelid, whereas Gunston does it and was pretty garbage. You're sitting there going, okay, well, it's not for us, but it is, because Rayner did what happened anyway, just offered, I think Darcy Gardner offered more in terms of pressure and ground level work than Gunston ever did in that one game.
Yeah, no, you're right.
He might not have kicked 7 goals against West Coast, but, like, which I think I gave him 3 votes for. But still, like, the amount of usefulness that Gardner had in the forward 50 was far more useful in terms of a sample space of 1 versus Gunston.
Well, like I said,
I think
it'll be a watch and see over the next 5-6 weeks before they make a final call on it, and but I think Fags will persist with it for a bit anyway, because we know, well, like, we can assume that that's what he wants. History will tell us that's what he wants, and he will try and make it work if he can. So I think he'll persist with it for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I take exception. Like, I don't think it's what he wants. It's what the game dictates.
Yeah.
All it'll take is for, if we're so worried about Hipwood and Danaher's lack of, marking impact and stuff like that, what happens when it's only them and they have an off night or whatever? Then it's like we have nothing literally going forward. I think Darcy Gardner learning a bit of forward craft and being that disruptor and stuff like that, all it'll take is Sicily having a blinder or lever or whatever, a great interceptor toweling us up, and then you're like, we weren't tall enough to go with him. Not you, I mean the general you.
Yeah,
I'm really putting it on you, Brooksy.
No, I understand.
I've got a lot of tactical sympathy for it, because I don't think it's a Fagan and his, you see a lot, it's like Fagan loves his talls. It's like, no, the game dictates the necessity for talls. Teams that only have 1 tall and then a Mozzie squad around them are very, very often an anomaly. And those teams are very, like, to 100%, they have a full-time 100% ruckman that can go like the Clappers forever. And I don't think that OE can do that, Like, even Sydney with a ruckman that probably can do that, and Grundy having a massive capacity, they don't really do that. They have more than 1 tall now, and they still share the ruck around. Like, the days of Steph Martin being the prototype, ruckman of being able to go the whole game, it's not possible.
Yeah.
Everyone wants it to be possible. The media tells you it's possible all the time, but it's not physically. Like, these guys are giants. Can't run all game. No one can run all game. Like,
all right, one last...
Unless you're Ben Cousins, and there's mitigating circumstances for that.
All right. One last question for Crisp Comms that is off the topic of the Carlton game, thankfully. This is from Mad Lion on Instagram. It was about the McClellan Trophy. It's been discussed, over the last 6 months. The McClellan Trophy, you're aware of this one? It's the $1 million prize for the men's and women's combined.
Never heard of her.
Okay, so the McClellan Trophy is a $1 million prize for a club whose men and women's team perform the best across both home and away seasons. So...
Oh, right. Okay, so it's like the old Wizard Cup, win that and win the premiership, get $1 million.
I guess if that was ever a thing. So...
Do you remember what thing? So if you won pre-season and then you won the premiership, you got like $1 million back in like the late 90s or 2000s or something.
Yeah, right.
Like that. So
okay.
Kind of really... Might have been the Ansett Australia Cup.
Sure. Well, this one is $1 million. $500,000 goes to the club. The other $500,000, I think, gets split up between the players, men and women, so $250 each there. So Melbourne actually won it across the season last year because their home and away record, by the time that men and women both finished up, was superior. I think they won by a game, and women's games counted for 8 points, men's for 4. Obviously...
Hold on, what? That does not make any sense.
Yeah, well, this is the question. So they, obviously, men and women both bowed out in straight sets in finals, whereas Brisbane won a grand final in the AFLW, made a grand final in the men's, missed out on the $1 million prize, even though, arguably, the better performing team across both leagues, when all said and done.
Say it with me, everybody. Vic bias. I know that trope gets thrown around, but...
I think it's just the way that it was structured. It was, the way it was worded and structured was it was based on home and away performance, and Melbourne technically did have the better across both.
Okay, yeah, I guess so. But then also, they need to fix their internal consistency because there was a graph on one of the shows. I can't remember because... Goodness me, on the couch is terrible. Let's not get into that. They had Western Bulldogs finishing ladder position, 8th to 9th, 8th to 9th, first when they won the premiership. Well, They didn't finish first on the ladder, did they?
Well...
They also didn't finish... So is your ladder position what it is, or is it where you finished in the home and away season? Because I think... It didn't even go with what they were trying to prove in terms of their point of them not being a great home and away team. Why would they have a graphic saying Western Bulldogs finished first and finished second? It's like, no, they finished 5th and 5th in those years. So use that to prove your point, which is the point you're trying to make. Don't garble it up with overperforming in finals. But anyway, the McClellan Trophy does not pass the eye test. Bullshit is all I'm going to say.
Yep.
Give us the $1 million and throw us a bone.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that view was shared with a lot of people, journalists, footy fans alike.
Why does Melbourne need an extra Melbourne dollars? An extra $1 million?
Well, they don't.
They don't. Yeah, that... What?
Yeah, and I'll be interested to see if it was readdressed at all this year.
I find it funny, the idea that they're, even if it is that you take into account finals or whatever, let's just say you had wins and losses and the team with the most wins over the course of the season. Yeah, Melbourne's straight set exits in finals, the men's team, are getting compensated by a single win by the women's. Yeah, so they're getting bailed out there. Melbourne oh man, I don't like Melbourne.
No, that view was also shared amongst Lions supporters across the country as well. So
I'm also throwing it out there. I called it. I mean, Max Gawn, nicest guy in prison. He is not a good bloke. He's a whingy little shitbag. And I'm glad Grundy absolutely towelled him for most of that game.
He did, didn't he?
And Gawn just went into his little shell because he doesn't love the physicality of the game.
Yeah,
Claims he does.
there's a few.
Big bald fella with a beard. Loves the fight. No, he doesn't. Soft.
Got run ragged, didn't he? Anyway,
You'd love to see it.
this isn't a feces flinging show about Melbourne. Let's get into the votes for hoponbrewerytours.com.au. Votes for the game on Friday. Where are you landing with this one?
Well, I didn't think about this until right now. So, you've really put me on the spot. Yeah, I'm going to go Wilmot the 3 because he did another run with a bunch of bouncers.
Yep.
On that, shouldn't he have gotten a 50-metre penalty for absolutely being body checked on that rule where if you dispose of it, get body checked to go for the give and go, you should be getting a 50-metre penalty and a downfield?
It was a free kick.
Did that
I think
year?
it was a free kick downfield.
I'm sure it's supposed to be a free kick and a 50-metre penalty because Zorko did that last year, and it was like, oh, this is that rule that they brought in to stop people body checking on a give and go, and it's like, well, that really would have put us inside 50 at that point in time. So Wilmot the 3, McCluggage the 2 because that goal, and Archie the 1 because I think he was far better than anyone would have expected.
Sure.
And also that goal was really good too.
Fair enough.
And I'm not thinking any more about it because I don't care to think any more about it.
All right, fair enough. Well, I'm going to...
These votes, hey? Yeah. What do you got?
Well, I'm going to throw some Carlton players in.
Oh, no, we're not doing Carlton players.
Yeah, we are.
No, we're not doing... It's you're throwing away votes.
I'm giving votes to the people I think deserve them that impacted the game and influenced the result.
I thought we agreed to only do Lions players because it's sort of... it just doesn't work. I'm not dealing with Harry McKay having 3 votes.
Well, he's not getting 3 votes. I was going to give it to Kerno.
No, I'm putting my foot down.
All right,
Putting my foot down.
Okay, for the podcast, I'll give, in that case, Zorko the 3, Lester the 2, and Wilmot the 1. But in real life, I'll give Kerno 3, Cripps 2, and Zorko 1.
Okay. I like the podcast land rather than real life land, so...
And I just quickly a word on Paddy Cripps. In that first half when Carlton were garbage, everything was left to Paddy Cripps. He was doing the work in the middle. He was doing the ruck work. He was drifting forward. He was being a true on-field captain leader. I thought he was one of the only ones that were really digging in when the rest of their team wasn't. And then everyone joined the party, and he moved forward, kicked a goal. So I thought he had a great game for those guys. And obviously Kerno, 4 goals. When they mattered as well, so either side of halftime, and I thought Zorko was.
You can tell we didn't. You can tell we didn't talk about the votes before this exact moment, given that I forgot about them, and then I obviously had a fit trying to dictate. I suppose, in all honesty, I do dictate the finals series votes, which I think I put my foot down for that then.
Yeah, that's fine.
So maybe the JB can be whatever you want it to be, but tell you what, if we end up with I don't know, what would be the worst thing? Josh Shackey getting a vote. Imagine if he kicked 10 goals or something.
I can't imagine a world where Josh Shackey's kicking 10 goals. Not in a game.
Neither can I, but yeah.
He'd be lucky to kick 10 goals in a season.
I'm thinking of literally the worst case, weirdest scenario. So
you want to hear what and this goes back to when did we draft Shackey? 2015, something like that.
Whatever year we didn't draft Wiedering, which would have been cool.
Yeah, it would have been handy.
I mean, we didn't get the opportunity to draft him, but
one of the shittest takes I've ever had was, I think at that time, after maybe 2 games or something, I decided to go out on a limb and go real Kane Corns here and try and make a hot take with my friend, and turned out to be garbage. And I said, mark my words, Hitwood and Shackey will be better than Brown and Bradshaw. And...
oh no.
Yeah. Upon reflection, one of the worst things ever said.
Brooksy.
Yeah.
What the hell? Because I've had some bad takes in my time. I mean, not really that bad. They're more just
nothing's that bad, except for that.
I mean, one of the best takes I think I've got, and I've got it saved on my phone, was 2019 when the fixtures list came out, and I called us to have at least 14 wins in that season.
Sure.
And I got laughed out of my group chat by the Harwoods. You're dreaming. And what did they do? I think they had 16 wins.
16 wins, yeah.
And that was having us coming off finishing 18th or whatever. Not 18th, 15th the season before. Picked us for 14 wins in 2019.
Well, there you go.
For every shit take, there's a good take.
Yeah, remarkably better than mine.
So let's have a look at players that we could have drafted instead of Josh Shackey.
Oh, don't do that.
No. It's funny. We could have drafted Calamarchi.
Well, we
could have drafted Charlie Curnow. We could have drafted Harry McKay. We could have drafted Clayton Oliver.
I think I prefer
Callum
Shackey.
Mills. Daniel Rioli. Tom Duday. Ben McKay. Ben Keys. Josh Dunkley. Anyway, I'm kind of done with this, but
I'm sure
we could have drafted Sam Skinner.
And we did.
That's the joke.
Look, yeah, we buggered it up, but any team in that position would have drafted him as well. You live and you learn, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, why though is the question I've got.
And no one has the answer. All right, changes you're making to the team. I can guess one off the bat.
Well, I mean, there's definitely going to be more than one. Where's the lineup? Okay, so out for me. Out. Lohman. Lions. Coleman. Who else are we swinging the axe on? Yeah, that'll do. Zorko goes to sub. And we bring in McKenna, Pryor, and Tunstall.
Sure.
That's what I'm doing.
I am...
Actually, hold on. There are other players missing. Dev Rob. Dev Rob comes in if he's fit instead of Tunstall.
Sure. Yeah, well, I'm swapping Dev for JL, and I'm swapping McKenna for Coleman, and Tunstall as a sub for Lohman.
Yeah, they have to go with a third half backer.
And if Jasper has another quiet game, he's probably next to go, I would say.
Well, that's kind of works.
Yeah, so I don't think Fags is going to swing the axe after that. Obviously, there's going to be some force changes, but JL's...
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call mine a particular axe swing. More so just the idea of Coleman can't play, and I think that Lohman's not offering, and I think in a perfect world they would have wanted Dev Rob to be Dev Rob would not have signed a new contract under the pretense that Jared Lyons would be playing ahead of him in the team. Jesus.
No, he's still coming back from that wrist, so and there's no VFL until late March, so it's not like he can prove his case at this point. So
plus, I also think with the power of friendship that Dev Rob and Jackson Pryor make each other better players when they play in the team together. It just works.
Yeah, you got a fair way to convince me with Jackson Pryor.
No, but I'm saying, Dev Rob wasn't in the team when he was playing like shit in the preseason. Had he been there, wouldn't have happened.
Maybe.
I asked you this. Oh no, we weren't doing the votes. That was when I was doing the Brian. Pryor I think he got full maximum votes in a game.
Sure.
On the Brian. I don't think Dev Rob has ever done that. Well, a lot of people actually haven't done that. Albeit, I think it was that game in Tasmania that we lost to Hawthorn because Jai Newcomb nuked us.
Yes.
But I think Jackson Pryor kicked 4 goals.
Sure.
Something like that. 3 goals, 1 from the boundary line in the wind. Playing almost by himself. But
I remember that game, and we had that race caller that was commentating the game. That Matt Hill dude. It was disgusting.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, it was awful.
Well, it was awful for more than that reason.
I mean, yeah, everything about it was bad.
Hawthorn, it's so weird. When Hawthorn were good, we seemed to beat them, or we're not good, but when they were not great. But now that we're good, they seem to beat us. So cool. Good chat, me.
All right. Well, we got Freo this week. Over in Freo, Sunday Twilight, as you said. And one thing that we are doing this year, the new segment where we're looking back on some memorable games, memorable moments between the two clubs. And maybe discussing a couple of dual citizens, players that have played for both along the way. The one, moment that sticks out, obviously last year where Ashcroft kicks that goal. The goal. The other game that instantly pops into my mind was a couple of years ago. Might have been 2019, might have been 2020. No, it wouldn't have been 2020 because it was over in Perth, so maybe 2021. Probably more likely 2019, where Freo, Michael Walters on the siren, hits the post to get the win. And I just remember that game sticking out where we got off to
That was, I think, 2019, yeah.
Yeah, we had a fairly decent lead. And Freo just kept pegging it back. And that last quarter, it was just like constantly going into the Freo forward line. We're like holding them off as much as we could before Sonny Walters kicked that goal on the side. Well, not the goal, that hit the post on the siren to secure the win. So not a great memory, but one that sticks out.
So I've got a couple. So first off, I'm going 2017.
Sure.
Albeit at the Gabba, but it was sort of, I think it might even have been, we beat Gold Coast in round one, and we didn't win a game until after the bye when they came to the Gabba, and we absolutely monstered them. Berry and McCluggage were amazing. And it was kind of like these kids are pretty good. It was that moment of like, okay, this team's going somewhere. We won by about 45 points. I think Tom Rockcliffe kicked 3 goals. Jake Barrett kicked a bullshit one from the boundary that should have been like potentially goal of the year, but because it's Jake Barrett, not a chance. And aside from that one, I'm going 2021 in Perth.
Lewis Taylor
Lockie
kicked.
Neal out.
Here's some more stats for you from that game, by the way. Lewis Taylor kicked 4 and Tom Cutler kicked 3.
Butler Cutler.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Weird times.
Dane Beam's 36 touches. Wowee.
So the other one I've got is, I think it was 2021. So Lockie Neal was out, which that flies given that was a year where he won the Brownlow and he had permanent injuries the whole season. And we sent Berry and McCluggage into the middle on Chera and Brayshaw, younger Brayshaw.
Yep.
And it was kind of like these Brayshaw and Chera, it's like these guys are like the up and comers, and it was like Berry and McCluggage hadn't spent a lot of time in the centres at that point. And it was like these guys should be future All-Australians, go in the middle and do your job. It was the one where Brayshaw eye gouged Berry.
Oh, that's right.
But they destroyed him, and I think we won pretty comfortably. But to go over to Perth, which was a place where, we didn't win in 2019. We'd had trouble. We've had trouble since. They played fantastically well, and it was a really good, I feel like a good indication of what, I'd like to see Berry in the middle more because he's so maligned outside and he's making bad decisions and he's
just
not
his
making
disposal.
it easy to like him, is it?
His disposal is so questionable. And he knows it. And he didn't do himself any favours on Friday night. But yeah,
he's a player. He's a player with a low floor and a high ceiling, and it's seeing those high ceiling games that makes it so frustrating. Games like where he destroyed Clayton Oliver in the qualifying final or elimination final, whatever it was, where you're just like, dude, do this every week.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
But I think Tom Berry showed more than him on the weekend.
He did, and that's that game. Gold Coast really showed us what we could have done and how to handle a team coming back, because they got off to a very handy lead against the Tigers. Tigers made a comeback, got within 3 or 4 goals, and then Gold Coast steadied the ship, and that's really what we needed. So, good for the Suns. Great to get their campaign off, and good to see Tom Berry play a fairly decent game there as well. And Matty Rao, great game. Freo this week. We saw last year when we went over a very tight game where we got over the line by about a goal, less than potentially, I think, 3 points or something in the end, if I remember. But Hayden Young was sort of one of his first ventures into the midfield and playing pretty closely alongside Lachie Neale. So it'll be interesting to see if they go with a similar tactic there. They had a pretty underwhelming pre-season, but so did Carlton, so I'm not going to let that lull me into a false sense of security.
Yeah, I think he was doing almost like a Jack Sinclair style Young in that game where he was floating from halfback. But he had a great game. And yeah, I just remember a couple of big Danaher tackles at the end of that game.
Yeah.
In the closing sort of stages. Obviously, we didn't have a great time there the year before when Fremantle actually looked like a good team. So I guess we'll see how we go because I don't think Owie played there last year. I think Fort came in for that game and he had to deal with Luke Jackson. Owie was out with an ankle.
That's right.
Either that or Owie did an ankle in that game, one of the two. So, yeah, given the full-timiness of Tom de Koning and how he kind of ran Owie a bit ragged, that's one to watch. But we should win.
We should.
No excuses, really.
Yeah, I know.
I want to see someone come out and... No, I'm not going to say that. That's too 1980s of me.
You want to see them hurt from last Friday, and you want to see them learn lessons, and you want to see them put the foot down and keep it down.
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, I remember talking to a close family friend of mine back in the day when he's a Carlton fan. Great. And it was when, I think it would have been in about 2015 or 2016, but it was after the Hawthorn game where they played North Melbourne and Lewis and Hodge both got suspended when North Melbourne had a bit going on about them.
Yeah.
They were sort of like taking it to them. They needed something to stop in the game and they basically needed some like tactical fouling. And Hodge and Lewis decided to take that into their ample hands. I'm not saying that that's the sort of mentality we should have, but there surely has to be an element of like, we're not letting this happen, you know?
Yeah.
Dane Zorko's going to wear a week for doing dumb stuff, at least wear a week for doing something useful.
Yeah, it'd be nice, wouldn't it?
I'm sure we'll wait for him to like, I don't know, do some, like poke someone in the eye again or fish hook someone in the mouth or... Yeah.
Just general shithousery from Dane Zorko. Would you?
He'll like touch an umpire and get 15 weeks. It's just, oh man, do something good. Useful.
All right, well, that'll just about do us for this week. Freo on Sunday. We'll be back this time next week. Don't forget to follow us on socials. Head to brisbanelionsfancast.com.au. Join the Patreon if you want to see this on video. And, just get involved. Send us your questions. Always happy to have a chat about anything.
And reach out if you're feeling particularly not good about anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll tell you to pull your socks up and fly right.
All right, well, I'll see you next week, my friend.
Is that to me or is that to all of our people?
Both.